You can't seem to open a newspaper or a trading app these days without hearing about China's rise. It's everywhere. It's driving markets, it's shaping politics. But here's the big question. Is China's global dominance a done deal, an inevitable reality? Or is the story a little more complicated? In this explainer, we're going to dig right into that.
So let's just cut to the chase. This is probably the single most important question in geopolitics right now. We're going to slice through all the noise, look at the cold, hard data, and try to figure out what's really going on. Are we talking about an established fact? Or maybe, just maybe, some very well-funded hype?
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the case for dominance. We're talking economic power, military muscle, and diplomatic strategy. Then we're going to flip the script and look at the pretty serious challenges China's facing at home. And finally, we'll put it all together and land on a clear verdict.
Okay, first things first, the economy. You just can't talk about China's power without starting right here. This is the absolute foundation of its global influence, so let's get a feel for the sheer scale of its industrial power.
Let's start with a number that's, well, it's pretty staggering. China cranks out nearly a third of everything the world manufactures. Just let that sink in for a second. Its role as the world's factory isn't just important anymore, it's become completely indispensable to global supply chains. The phone in your pocket, the parts in your car, its reach is literally everywhere.
And look, it goes way deeper than just putting together the final product. It's about controlling the raw ingredients. China has a near monopoly on processing the critical minerals that you need for, well, everything in the modern world, from EV batteries to fighter jets. This isn't just some economic advantage. It's a massive strategic chokehold on the entire world's green energy and high-tech future.
And China's not just sitting on this advantage, not by a long shot. They're actively expanding their web of influence. Through gigantic infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, they're physically connecting huge parts of the world back to Beijing. And that has made China the #1 trading partner for a massive list of countries, putting it right at the heart of global commerce.
So, you've got this economic juggernaut, but does the military muscle match the financial might? That brings us to our next big question. Are we looking at a new military superpower?
All right, check this out. This next number is just wild. China's capacity to build warships is more than 230 times that of the United States. That insane industrial power has let them build the world's largest navy, by number of ships anyway, in what feels like the blink of an eye. And that is fundamentally changing the military calculus, especially in the Pacific.
And it's not just about the Navy either. The money tells the story. China's defense budget now just absolutely dwarfs what its neighbors are spending, combined. All that cash is fueling a top-to-bottom modernization of its military. And yeah, it's validating a lot of concerns across the region about a major shift in the balance of power. You know, it's not just us saying this. This quote from a former Prime Minister of Portugal really captures the global mood on this. The perception out there is crystal clear. China is closing the gap with the US fast, and not just in terms of money, but as an all-around global power.
Okay, so we've got the economy, we've got the military, but there's a third piece to this puzzle, diplomacy. China isn't just trying to get a better seat at the old table. No, it's trying to build a brand new table, a post-Western, multipolar world.
So what's in their playbook? Well, it's a few key moves. They're building up their own clubs, like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS Group. They're trying to wedge themselves between the US and Europe. But the real kicker? They champion this idea of non-interference. And that message, we'll give you money and build your roads with no strings attached, is incredibly appealing to developing nations that are frankly tired of Western lectures.
All right, so the case for China's dominance, it looks pretty rock solid, right? But, and this is a big but, is the foundation as strong as the building looks from the outside? It's time to look at the serious trouble brewing on the home front.
This chart, this right here, tells you almost everything you need to know about the cracks in that foundation. In China, regular people buying things only makes up 38% of the economy. I mean, compare that to 68% in the US. It means China's growth is dangerously dependent on the government pouring concrete and on selling stuff to the rest of us, not on the sustainable spending of its own people.
And that creates this crazy situation, this total paradox. On the one hand, you have an export machine that's breaking records. On the other, you've got incredibly weak demand at home. This huge imbalance is a massive weak spot, and it's something every single investor and business leader absolutely has to have on their radar.
And at the absolute epicenter of this domestic weakness is the property crisis.
See, real estate in China isn't just another industry. It's a quarter of their entire economy. And it holds an incredible 70% of the average family's total wealth. So when that sector goes into a nosedive, it doesn't just slow down the economy, it completely shatters people's confidence and their willingness to spend a dime.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Property crisis. That sounds a lot like 2008 all over again, right? Well, yes and no. The situations are actually quite different. The US crisis was all about toxic debt spreading like a virus through the global banking system. China's problem is more like a slow, grinding brake on its own growth. It's a huge fiscal headache for its local governments, for sure, but it's a different kind of risk than a worldwide financial meltdown.
Okay, let's put all the pieces together. We've seen incredible strength, and we've seen some very serious weaknesses. So, after all that, what's the final verdict on China's dominance?
So here's the bottom line. China is, without a doubt, a formidable superpower, but its path to total global dominance is absolutely not guaranteed. Its ambitions on the world stage are being seriously held back by major problems at home. What that really means is we're not heading for a world run by China. Instead, we're moving into a much more complex, messy, and multipolar world with several big players competing for influence. And for those of you who are professionals, who are investors, this means you've got to play both sides, tracking the huge opportunities in China's supply chains while keeping a very close eye on the very real risks of instability.
And that really brings us to the final question, one I'll leave with you. As this old, familiar order starts to fade and this more complicated world takes shape, where do you see the biggest risks and the biggest opportunities starting to emerge? It's definitely something we're all going to have to think about. Thanks for tuning in.